ways to get that same emotional state without using food, which is a really long process, and that takes time. So that's one of them. And another one I would say just habits around like nighttime eating and not staying consistent and falling on and off, and self-criticism and really beating themselves up. So taking a look at those different parts of ourselves that are talking at all times. There's usually like an inner critic talking, and then there's an emotional part talking. So taking a look at all the parts and seeing what they have to say, and giving them all a say as well. So that goes into the emotional part.
Yeah, okay. That's it. I think you've summarized that perfectly. What percentage would you say of our eating these days is either mindless, where we sort of just do it and we're actually not tasting the food, or it's heavily based in emotional reaction to a stress response or something?
I think those are almost like kind of combined.
Yeah.
If we're working all day long at a computer, and then we don't stop to take a break, and we're just powering through lunch, and we're eating at our desk, and we're eating mindlessly, and then we're also probably eating more than we would because we're stressed, and then we might go to the break room and then mindlessly get a cupcake there because it's Halloween here in the States. So there's, from here on out, for the rest of the season, there'll be stuff in the break room. So those kind of are combined: mindless eating, emotional eating, throughout the day. And then when we come home, especially, is a really challenging time for most people. They come home and it's hard to set boundaries at that point because everything is available, everything is there, and we're stressed and we're overwhelmed. And that's the thing most of us go to when we want some comfort.
Yeah, I think. And then do you see it, Colleen, snowballing then? Is it like you get this, you have the cupcake, and you have the extra coffee, and you have the things, and then all of a sudden that consumption limits or refines the energy that you've had, and then you don't go to the yoga session, or you don't go to for that run. That influences the sleep, and then the next day you sort of get back on that treadmill of needing the extra coffee, you need the extra hit of sugar, and that sort of begins to slowly or quite quickly sometimes just wipe out everything because you just haven't got the energy and the vibration to get through life.
Absolutely. It can kind of get you in this pattern of stuckness day in and day out, and leave you like, how do I even get out of this?
Yeah.
And it also, like you said too, affects your energy, and it's also going to affect the gut microbiome. And we know now that a lot of sugar intake really affects the gut microbiome, and the gut microbiome is connected to our mood and our brain health. So there's that part of the equation too.
I'd love for you, Colleen, because I'm glad you just said that. Could you just touch, for any listeners and anyone that sort of doesn't understand or has never heard of the word microbiome, and understanding the connection that gut brain has with our head brain per se, and sort of what that relationship looks like, but also what are the foods that make that gut brain healthier, that send the signals up to the head brain, and which ones which ones are healthier and which ones really make it unhealthy?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. So the gut microbiome is this like incredibly complex ecosystem in basically our gut. It's like an organ in itself, and it has been linked to like our immune system, our mood, our mental health, like autoimmune diseases, skin conditions, and like so much more. So a person has, I think they said, about 300 to 500 different species of bacteria in their gut, and depending on what they're eating, it can lean more towards what they call like opportunistic critters, which are more likely to work against you, versus the ones we want more of. And the ones we want more of are going to be accumulated by eating lots of probiotic and prebiotic foods. So probiotic is going to be the actual bacteria that you eat, and then so it could be through a supplement, or it could be through fermented foods you eat, and then it populates your gut. Or prebiotic foods like asparagus or cruciferous vegetables. There's this one amazing prebiotic food called baobab, which is harvested from Africa. It's this beautiful fruit that they get. We can talk more about that if you want, but that's a prebiotic fiber which will help to feed the bacteria in your gut to support the good microbiome. And then if we have too much sugar, if we're overly stressed, then we're going to create more of those opportunistic critters in the gut, which won't be as supportive and can lead to, like we were just saying, a whole host of issues like immune health issues, your mood, your mental health. And then, you even create neurotransmitters in your gut. I don't know if you've heard this before, but the serotonin
Yeah.
is created there. So there's that connection, our gut-brain connection. And there's you can kind of think of it as like a cycle. So it's really hard to get out of this cycle. So if we have emotional trauma from the past that is creating these habits that that make us eat basically unhealthy and lots of sugar, and there's unhealthy coping mechanisms, which leads into gut dysbiosis, and it's like this never-ending cycle of unhealed trauma to unhealthy coping mechanisms to gut dysbiosis and back around and around and around. And until we take a look at unhealed emotional trauma and the gut health and the coping mechanisms, then we're never going to really get out of that cycle.
Yeah. Okay. I think you've summed that up, like as much as I know, and I don't know anywhere near, I don't think as much as you, but yeah, I think what you've sort of mentioned there is spot on in terms of just how much we don't know, but how connected our bodies are with our minds, but also with everything else within nature. Because the simplest, I don't know that much about it, but if we eat living foods like probiotics and stuff that's really got good nutritional value, but that's alive, that actually helps our gut, that helps our brain, that just almost helps how we connect as one with sort of nature.
Yes, absolutely. That's so true.
Love to talk to you about your yoga practice and also about what you see, why you see yoga as being really important. I sort of see in some of your social feeds that it seems to be a really strong practice for you, and that mindfulness piece and how that's helped you on your journey, but also how you sort of recommend that to clients as well, whether it's just yoga or whether you actually do recommend any other sorts of exercise, or whether you think yoga is a preference because of that connection to body and mind.
Yes, so yoga, is more than just asana. Yes, yoga is asana, which is the movement and the physical part of yoga. But then there's also, the mindfulness piece and the breath work piece and just being present piece. And that's often what I will do personally with clients on our calls together. We will start the session with some mindfulness and some meditation and some breath work. And, if they want to take some asana yoga into their practice, into the day-to-day, then definitely encourage that as well. But yoga has been huge for me. It originally started for me just because I was curious about it and wanted to give it a try. And I'm an athletic person, so I was very open to giving it a try. And I found that it really helped me become more mindful, and I didn't really even know what that meant until starting to do yoga, like where my body was in space when I was doing poses, and that was a whole new concept for me, and I just wanted to learn more about it. And ever since then, it has really helped me just help me listen to my body more, if that makes sense. Because before, I didn't really do that. I was a triathlete, and I did Ironman triathlons, I did ultra marathons, and I was kind of like a go person all the time. And not to say that those are bad, because some people really like thrive off of those and really listen to their bodies, but I was the type of person that just was go, didn't listen to my body, and yoga really helped me to slow down and connect.
Yeah. I'm hearing you. I think, the feedback that the yoga gives the body, and that you have to listen to those feelings. I think you're exactly right, moment to moment, whereas some other exercises such as running or triathlon is a little bit more where you can just sort of numb out and grind it out, and there's not as much reception or receptivity to the body as in live moments, because it's over such a long period of time where yoga is quite in the moment.
Yes, absolutely. That's a challenge, is slowing down. And I think that in our society today, we're pressured to do more, and we're not not doing more, that means we're not, I don't know, that we're not doing good enough.
Yeah.
And I think yoga really helped me do is slow down and say that I don't need to do more in order to be enough.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think there's this feeling that, we need to do more to be more, and that everyone's constantly on and constantly in a high stress state, and slowing down almost feels in some ways non-productive. But it's so much needed, because that's, in our natural human existence, pause moments and moments of stillness and slower movement and connection have been with us throughout time. But we're finding ways with technology, with our phones and everything, that if we got a moment of stillness or slowness, that we try to fill it up and speed it up quickly, because we don't like to sit in that moment for too long.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you're mentioning. But do you see that playing out too, Colleen, with food, like that sort of, because we can just get food so quickly and so conveniently now, and generally the poor food is so cheap. So people, again, it just plays into the hands of that modern life of people that are time poor, financially poor, just naturally get gravitated towards a nutritionally poor option, as opposed to someone that's got a bit more time or creates the space for themselves, firstly to make some nice food, but I think secondly to actually invest 30 or 40 minutes a week into educating themselves about food and what's good food, as opposed to just being told by other people.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the nutrition, I think we're so overloaded with all the different nutrition information out there, and people can get into like analysis paralysis and then just go back to what they've known, which, I mean, for me, growing up, I grew up in Ohio here in the U.S., which is like, it's considered the Midwest. And basically what that means in terms of food is just like meat and potatoes and lots of sugar and lots of soda.
Yep.
And that was all I knew. And until I did have to educate myself on what was healthy, and, like navigating through all the confusion can be difficult if you don't have a background in nutrition.
Yep.
And you're susceptible to like the diet mentality, which, that's a thing too.
Yeah, and for every study that you could talk about being plant-based, or you could talk about this or that, there's always another study or another bit of research that sort of counteracts that they've created to make it harder for people to know which is the right one, which then ultimately people then go, I don't know which one's correct or which one's not, and then just go back to the old ways anyway, because you're right, that decision making's become so hard and clouded that it's easier just to go to the default food.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's so important to get support when we're making changes.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to go back to our old habits. We can do it for like a week or so, but then we quote unquote fall off, and then we beat ourselves up, and then we say, oh, I'm a failure. And if we don't have support in that, then it's really easy to get stuck again.
And do you think that most people these days, like for me growing up when I was young, there actually wasn't as much obviously information out there, but like, we went through the whole concept of that you thought fat-free was quite healthy, but even though it had a heap of sugar in it because it was fat-free, people were thinking that was actually good. Whereas these days, most people generally know that soft drinks and sodas are bad, high sugar's bad, that there's a general understanding that, fruits and vegetables are mostly good, as long as they've been brought up in the right way, that a lot of the focus needs to be on, as we spoke about earlier, creating new habits, new ways of thinking about food, different lifestyle changes, because that's where people are falling down, as opposed to knowing actually what good and bad food looks like.
Yeah, I think there is a breakdown in the fundamentals. We're often looking for like this shiny magic pill, like what else do you got for me, but it's really, we have to just get back to the basics and do the repetition of the fundamentals, because that's where the magic is, and that's the thing we're avoiding doing, because like I was saying, I think that we often want a different answer,
Yeah.
So getting back to, like you said, reducing the sugar, drinking more water, getting sleep, and making sure we're getting more fruits and vegetables, and